All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. We're doing something special we've never done before. This is part of AMP's mission to educate and share knowledge. We've done panels on a number of topics over the years. We've covered a lot of ground, but we've never done anything on podcasts. And we have a relatively new member, David Hoffman, who runs CitizenRacecar. He's joined by one of his team members, Alex, here, and they're going to take us through what is a podcast, how you make them, some of the technology, some of the gear, how they come up with narrative, how they distribute it, how they work with clients. So really a comprehensive view from the experts about what the podcast world is all about. So we're really excited to share this with you. And for those of you that are new to AMP or unfamiliar, it stands for Association of Music Producers. I'm currently the national president, so I try to organize as much of this stuff as I can. I'm also available if you ever want to reach out to me and ask questions or say hello. But AMP is a trade organization. We're focused on music and audio, advocating for best practices, fair budgets and payment plans and terms with our clients. And we have a lot of knowledge base that we've built over the years, a lot of resources for members. We've been doing a lot more community building events to try to bring people together and share ideas. And that's what AMP is all about. We're here to support each other, talk about common experiences, and try to all do better together as an industry. So thanks for joining us tonight. We're really excited to hear from David and Alex, and I will kick it over to them. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, everybody. My name is David Hoffman, and I'm here with my colleague Alex Brower. And we are really excited to be talking to you guys today about podcasting. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, what we're going to do is a really general outline about how we approach the project of creating a new and successful podcast series. Just to manage some expectations, here's just a quick agenda of the points we're going to try and hit. So I'm going to start just talk a minute about who we are as an organization, kind of what our bona fides are to be giving this presentation. I'm going to spend a minute on the question of what is a podcast, because that's actually a remarkably contentious and salty question at the moment, but I have a viewpoint about that I want to share. And then we're going to go through our process from sort of conception, coming up with the right concept for a new show, through production, post-production, publication, and promotion. And then I'm hoping we'll have some time at the end for your questions. So who are we? We're representing a company called CitizenRacecar. We have been doing this since 2012. And what we do primarily is we produce branded podcast series. So we are brought in by a company, a brand, a nonprofit organization, a government agency who want to do better communication, who want to do outreach to a particular community, who want to educate about a particular topic. And we create the show for them to do that, and we produce it from beginning to end. In addition, we also run a program for the last 3 years called After School Podcasting. It's our education program where we send producers into after school programs and summer camps and teach the kids how to create their own shows. This has been tremendously exciting for us. We have a dedicated team now that runs this. We've been in, I want to say, 200 schools in New York City running this program, something like that. And we've done pilot programs at a couple other places in the country, and we're just now activating some partnerships in California. So that's all very exciting, something we're really proud of. We've won a number of awards for our work, which we're very proud of. We try and stay really active in the industry with different trade organizations. I have a Substack where I talk about the sort of the intersections of media and marketing. And we have a podcast about making better podcasts available on all your apps if you want to hear a more deep dive into some of these ideas about the artistry behind creating soundscapes. So, what is a podcast? This isn't a very controversial topic, actually, in the industry. And I think it is because of a homonym problem, that there are actually two entirely different kinds of project and kinds of pieces of work that are both called by the same name. I think that's the source of the conflict and the confusion. The first one of these comes from the original meaning of the word podcast, which I think maybe not everybody knows or remembers, is that they're named for the iPod, which is this device here on the left. I'm old enough to have owned one of these. I don't know how many other people on the call are. But if you don't know, it's an Apple product, precursor to the iPhone, that was actually it's just an MP3 player. So it was as a way to carry your music library in your pocket. And the idea behind podcasting, as opposed to broadcasting, was to put different kinds of content onto this box. So retrofitting radio shows and creating new kinds of audio programs that people could subscribe to via an RSS feed, download onto their iPod, and then listen to wherever they were walking to. And what's interesting about this is that its original definition, it is a delivery system. It is an RSS feed full of audio files that generally talk, but not always, but really could be anything. Could be a talk show, could be a news broadcast, could be radio drama, scripted fiction, could be all kinds of things. Now, what happened over the last several years is the most popular format in that audio delivery system was a talk show because it's easy. The tech is light, the conception is simple. And so people got used to the idea that a podcast was kind of a low budget radio talk show. And then some of those shows started becoming web series where they would go online, where they would go on places like YouTube. And then that became a podcast. And so there are audio not at all, or audio is only secondary shows that now people consider podcasts. That's interesting because we're very much in the first camp. When people say podcast, a lot of times they think about this other thing, which is sort of a kind of a low budget talk show on YouTube. That original definition of audio delivered by RSS feed still has incredible value and a lot of consumption. Hundreds of millions of people listen to audio in that way. And you can do things in that medium that you can't do with any other kind of web series because it's audio only. A couple of things, you can listen to it anywhere. You don't have to make an appointment with it the way you do with a video. You say, okay, this is what I'm doing now. You can put it on the background. You can put it on while you're driving, doing your chores, walking the dog, all these things, which puts it in places in people's lives that other media can't go. It also has the ability to go in depth because of that, because you're not, okay, this is what I'm doing. People will consume much longer content than they will in other media. So it's not at all atypical for a podcast series, as you probably know, to be 45 minutes, half an hour. Some of the most popular shows are even 2, 3, 4 hours long, which you really can't do with a video show and have people sit and watch it. So I think that's interesting. Um, and there's also something deeper, which is that there's a particular intimacy. I don't think I have to sell anyone on this call on the value of sound, but a video or other kinds of digital media exist in a box that's over there, and you're over here. But a podcast, in this audio podcast sense, is actually broadcasting inside your skull. It's whispering in your ear, and that's an incredible level of intimacy that other media can't touch. And that's something we like to think about and utilize in our work. It's also worth saying that it's very inexpensive. You can do a lot in audio that you cannot do in video without adding a zero or two to the budget. Because we don't need lights, we don't need cameras, we don't need a set. We don't need to think about what people are wearing or what their makeup looks like. We can do things, and we love doing things like documentaries where we're moving around and bringing in lots of different speakers and doing soundscapes and all these things that would be tremendously expensive to do in video. And in audio, we could play and have fun and do all kinds of things at a totally different budget level. So really what we're selling with this because again, what we specialize in are branded shows. What we're specializing in is deep affinity. An advertisement is selling you something, and you might feel any kind of different way about the company that's selling you that thing. But if they're providing you with really amazing content that you're returning to over and over and over again, if you're listening to their podcast every week that they're providing you with, that is going to develop affinity for that company, for that organization, that normal advertising and marketing can't do. where you're thinking, you hear their name, you're like, oh man, I love those guys, because you're spending an hour a week with them, with something that they gave you as a gift. And that's really powerful for this sort of deep level marketing. And that's usually where we come in. And that's the problem we can help with our clients. This is my diagram of branded podcast success. And I think it applies, this kind of thinking applies to other kinds of podcasting, other kinds of media as well, which is that a successful show really needs to pay attention to three things in order to achieve what you want it to achieve. The first of these is, who are you? Meaning you, the client, you, the company, you, the organization. What do you want to say? What do you want to communicate to people? What do you want them to know about you? Um, Now, I think everyone thinks about that when they're doing any kind of marketing project, but unfortunately, that's usually where they stop thinking. They think about, what do we want to say? They figure out how to say that, and then they wonder why no one's listening to it. And the reason is because there are two other things that are equally important. The second one, and this is a big leap for a lot of clients of ours that we really need to bring them to, is, who is your audience and what do they want? This has to be something that is useful and or entertaining or inspiring, or all three of those things, for those people, for them to welcome it into their lives regularly. You can't just do a half an hour advertisement for yourself and have every week and have people want to consume it. Um, I often think of this as having a conversation with your audience, where, if you were to come up to somebody at a cocktail party and say, this is who I am, this is what I do, you should hear about me, 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 they're not going to be interested in you. But if you can find a point of mutual interest and say, oh, here's this thing, I'm interested in this, are you interested in this, let's talk about it, that's where you can really grab someone's attention. And I think the organizations we work with, that's the sort of shows we like to make for them. So that's the second one. And the third one, this is a metric that I invented, which I call minimum viable flamboyance. It has to be different enough. It has to be weird enough. It has to be noticeable enough in the marketplace, or people aren't going to find it. A lot of people come into this and they say, well, I want to make a show that's just like what my competitor made because theirs is successful and I want that success. Well, that's exactly what you shouldn't do. You should make a show that is like nothing anyone else is making, because that's the one that will stand out and be noticed and get attention. Because if nobody finds it, it doesn't matter how interesting, inspiring it is. So I think all three of these are what we like to think about at the beginning of a project. How are we achieving these? And so to do that, we start every engagement with a dedicated discovery period. This usually takes a month, sometimes 2 months. We assign two producers to it, and then eventually our graphic designer as well. And they're doing research and meetings with the client. Okay, let's define the goals very specifically. What are we trying to achieve? Who are we trying to talk to? Who are you? What do you want to express? What's the tone of your brand communication? How can we match that and support that? This audience that you want, what are they consuming? What are they listening to? What are the gaps in what's available to them? What's something we can provide them that they'll say, oh my goodness, I've been waiting for that. Nobody's given me that before. That's a great show to make. And then we start thinking about format. Who should the on-air talent be? Is it someone from your organization? Is it one of the production team? Or are we hiring professional voice talent? Are we engaging a third-party influencer and partnering with them? We've done all of those things, depending on the show. And then we make a plan. All right, how do we make this? What's the schedule? How are we gonna deliver this on the schedule that we need and with the budget that we've defined? Which brings us to production. Before we start, I just want to, this is the other saltiest topic, as it is in everything right now. I'm sure it's coming up in whatever you do, which is the use of AI. We've made a very conscious decision as a company to use AI as little as possible, which is to say almost not at all. We think it's a really important part of what we're selling, and the real value of the medium is that you are connecting with an actual human at a distance. So we don't we don't use ChatGPT to write anything. Everything is written by a person, by a writer. We don't use avatars or deep fake modeled voices, which more people are doing than you might think. And that's just an important part of our take on this. There is a minimum use of sort of machine learning things in post production, which Alex will talk about when he gets to post production. But that's a whole different kind of technology. I think using machine learning for noise reduction is very different from having it write your script. So I think that's worth saying. That's something we believe really strongly in as a company. But what do we use? So we use people. Um, the general team for a show is basically four people, in addition to whoever's coming in from the client side or any third-party talent or whatever we're bringing in. We have a producer assigned to the show. Usually, our producers work on two or three things at a time to make up a full-time job. They are planning the episode out with the client. They are booking all of the guests, all of the talent, coordinating that, doing scheduling. They are supervising all the recording sessions. I'll talk about our recording techniques in a minute. And then they are doing story editing. This is a really important part of the process that, again, a remarkably small amount of podcasters actually do. We're not just recording something and throwing it out in the world. We are very carefully crafting the narratives that we put out. And even something that sounds like an off the cuff interview. Generally, if we're doing a half an hour interview show, we're recording for an hour or an hour and a half and cutting it down to its best moments. And that's the producer's job as well. And then it goes to post production, which is Alex and his team, where they do all the things you guys might be familiar with as music producers. Music, which is both themes, music, stingers, underscoring, sound design, mixing, mastering, getting things ready to broadcast. Then we publish, make sure it goes out to all the apps where everybody can listen to it. We do marketing and audience building, and we have a person on the team who's in charge of that part of the process. And then there's always a top level person in an executive producer role who's really just kind of doing quality control and doing kind of top level client management, making sure that the client's happy, that we're hitting the goals that they are trying to achieve. So this is something about cadence. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. A lot of people, a lot of sort of amateur podcasters, and or if they're this one show is their job, they will go episode to episode. So if it's a weekly cadence, they are conceiving of something on Monday, they're recording it on Tuesday, they're mixing it on Wednesday, and they're putting it out on Friday. We will occasionally do that if it is a show about current events and we need to cover the things that happened in that week. Then we will do that. It is our absolute least favorite way to work, though. We much prefer, whenever possible, to work in batches and work in seasons where we're conceiving and planning out 10, 12, 15 episodes as a batch, capturing all the tape we need to produce those episodes, producing them, post producing them, and then rolling them out and marketing them on a schedule and letting that rollout be its own process. This is how people do TV shows. It's our favorite way to work whenever we can. Depending on the kind of show we're doing, it's a combination of sort of studio recordings and field recordings. If we're doing studio recordings, we might be working on a in a professional studio, which we will rent. We don't have our own studio space. Uh, don't need it. We work all over the country, so it wouldn't be practical. Um, or we're doing field recordings where we're bringing equipment to a location, or we're doing sort of a remote recording, which is something we've gotten really good at we got really good at in the pandemic. And I'll talk through that process because I think it's interesting to people exactly how we do that. It's kind of an interesting low tech, high tech thing that we do, which is we will actually mail out a recording kit, which looks like this. I have one here on my desk. It's a microphone. This is our favorite microphone to use, Shure SM7B. If any of you have ever done radio, you probably know it. I like it because it sounds great. It's got a great combination of clarity and sort of proximity effect. Um, but it's also it's very directional. It's very forgiving of things like background noise. So we can mail this out to somebody who's just working in an office, in a conference room, and get a fighting chance of having clear sound because it's not picking up much that happens over here, over here. It's really right here. So that's why we like it. They are a bit expensive, but they're our favorite. We'll send out a tabletop stand like this one, XLR cable, and a field recorder. This is our favorite, Zoom H6. Lamentably, they no longer manufacture them. I have my stockpile that I sit on like a dragon's hoard. We're still trying to figure out what to replace it with, but we love these guys. Um, and they record just to an SD card. Um, And so what we will have people do, we will mail them this kit, the host of the show, or if we have the budget and the time, the guests as well. And then we'll convene them over a Zoom call, just like this one. Everyone will be listening to the Zoom call on headphones, recording themselves into the box. And then after the recording session, we collect all of these recordings. They just email them to us and or upload them to our Google Drive. And then we take the Zoom recording and sync up each of those separate recordings to the Zoom call and then remove the Zoom call. And now we have the effect, if we've done this right, and we've gotten really good at it, of having three people in three different locations all sound like they're talking around a table together. And we've done this with crazy distances. We've literally had one person in Alaska, one person in Spain, one person in California, and we were able to achieve the effect of everyone in the studio, which is pretty great. If we're not able to get the desktop kit to everyone on the call, we will record them on Zoom. We'll keep their Zoom audio, delete the people who have the desktop kit, and then the effect is that the hosts are in the studio and the guests are calling in. You're used to it from radio, and so people accept that. Oh, the one guy is the guest, that's why he sounds worse. But we've actually gotten very good at post-producing Zoom audio when we have to. What we do then is we take those recordings and the producer of the show will upload them into this software, Descript. This is a very cool piece of software. It's also very buggy. They're a bit of a pain in the butt, but we've really come to depend on it. And what this does is when you upload a multi-track recording, it creates a transcript you can name, and then you can listen to the audio.
To help us wrap up our 10th season of Formative, we're joined by Grizel Del Valle.
Now, what's cool is you can now edit the text as if you were working with a word processor. So do things like cutting and pasting. And it cuts the audio in the background.
Hello and welcome. I'm Rachel Gazdick, CEO of New York Edge, to help us wrap up our 10th season of Formative.
Now, that's really powerful. And you can do a lot with it, too. You notice this is crossed out using this strike through. The reason that is because this was a moment where you hear the voice of the producer
Go after
doing the
them.
talent.
We also talk about how social media has reshaped her career.
So we want to get rid of that. You can either just delete it, in which case you can't see it, you don't know it was there, or you can tell Descript to ignore it, so you know, okay, I cut something there,
To go
but you
after
can't hear
them.
it.
We also talk about how social media has reshaped her career, the realities of being an.
Now, and then it puts all the different voices in
Would you
sequence
both
in the
introduce
transcript.
yourselves to our listeners?
Hi, my name is Davion. I come from MSAP. I'm 14 years old, and I like to write poems and draw.
Hi, I'm Shania Lewis. I come from MSAP. I'm 13 years old. I'm in 7th grade, and I like acting and theater.
Fabulous. And who is today's guest?
Today we will be interviewing Grizel Del Valle. She is a singer, an actor, and a songwriter.
Grizel, we're so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, guys.
So that's 4 different people in 3 different rooms, very different microphone setups, very different parts of the 3 different parts of the country. And the function of this level of production, and we love using this software because it really is about the story. You're thinking about what order do these words go in. We're not thinking about sound quality at all at this point, because you'll notice the sound quality is not excellent. We'll get to that next. Right now, it's really just the producer's job to think, okay, what chunk of what paragraph goes first? What paragraph goes second? And then we can download from this software into post-production. And to talk about post-production, I'm going to invite my colleague Alex, who is our post-production lead.
Hi guys. Yeah, my name's Alex. I do post-production, and I'm going to share my screen and show you the software that I use called Reaper. Reaper's kind of like a no-frills budget version of Pro Tools, and it does most of the same things, but it's easy for us all to get copies if we need to have freelancers or things like that. And my general philosophy when I get these podcasts is, well, first of all, I do get them in STEM format from Descript, which is really nice. So it automatically applies all those cuts, and I just get the audio files of, all the different tracks. And so I'll get these long audio files, and there's lots of dead air time in them. And my first thing is to go through and organize and cut all that dead air, because within there, there's background noises, there's things going on. So one of the big things that's important to do is just to remove everything that's distracting. And so my main philosophy when I'm editing these is to make everyone the same volume and make it so that the listener is not going to need to turn up the volume, turn down the volume, adjust it. I don't want someone to have to listen to these shows and then rewind, and be like, what did they say there? And so I kind of just try to make it pretty much seamless across the board. I'm removing most dynamics. It's really the opposite of movies. Yeah, so I get the audio and I bring it in, and then I usually separate things by voices in one group, and then music in another group, and then sound design in the third group. I kind of compress it just by chopping off. Like I think of compressing almost more like limiting with this kind of stuff, is like, you can see the peaks of the audio, and I try to just kind of shave the tops of that off and just kind of move it down. I do a lot of manual adjusting of the audio. You can see the regions here, like, this one I turned down 2 decibels. Another thing that I will often do is, I guess you could call it parallel compression or something like that, where I take one track and I do lots of things to it, and I make it sound completely different. And then I have 2 versions of it, where I have the original and I have the one that's like smashed, and then I can get a better, thicker sound that way. But I'll play you some clips of this so you can hear the finished product.
To help us wrap up our 10th season of Formative, we're joined by Grizel Del Valle. Grizel is a singer, actress, and performer. In today's episode, she shares how to recognize the right opportunities and find the courage to go after them. We also talk about how social media has reshaped her career, the realities of being an independent artist, and the story behind her stage name, La Chachi. Hello and welcome. I'm Rachel Gazdick, CEO of New York Edge, and today we have 2 co-hosts, Shania and Davion. Would you both introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Hi, my name is Davion. I come from MSAP. I'm 14 years old, and I like to write poems and draw.
Hi, I'm Shania Lewis. I come from MSAP. I'm 13 years old. I'm in 7th grade, and I like acting and theater.
Writer.
Grizel, we're so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Let's get started then. Shania, what's your first question?
Okay, so we know that you go by the name La Chachi. Is there any reason you came up with that name, or what does it mean?
So my name is Grisel del Valle, but La Chachi or Chachi was the name that my godmother gave me when I was a little girl. I've always...
So another thing that's really important to be doing while I'm editing this in post is adjusting for pacing and removing verbal tics and ums and ahs and things like that. Our software Descript does do that. You could click a button and remove all the ums and double words and ahs, but it is definitely not perfect, and it will sometimes add more space than it needs or less space than it needs, and like it's not seamless. It's not good yet. Maybe it will be someday. But so I'm listening, I'm adjusting pacing, bigger pause here, better pause there. And when you do this long enough, you start to realize that like you can really make people sound more intelligent or sound more prepared, because sometimes people, even if they're really smart, they may just be nervous, or they may not be prepared for that question. So then they take a long time to think or things like that. And if you're the listener, you don't want to be listening to somebody fumbling for words. I mean, we all have a lot going on. We're all busy, we're probably cooking or walking our dog, or working out or whatever, driving in our car when we're listening to these. So I just think we want to get all the information, all the good stuff to our ears in a way that we're not going to be distracted by it. This is the audio.
So my name is Grisel del Valle, but La Chachi or Chachi was the name that my godmother gave me when I was a little girl.
So that's Zoom audio. And so I've run that. There's like some background noises in there. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's kind of
You have done some
raspy.
sound reduction on that, have you not? Some noise reduction on that?
Yeah, there's some stuff is done to it. It's running through a bunch of other effects. Like that's not just completely raw. And then this is after I like pretty much slam it with I like put a ton of compression on it, limiting and run it through an enhancer and get like major noise compression to the point where it sounds a little bit unnatural and robotic. It sounds like it's an AI voice. And I find that when I combine these two, it sounds pretty great.
My name is Grisel del Valle, but La Chachi or Chachi was the name that my godmother gave me when I was a little girl.
So it sounds like an AI voice because it's been processed digitally. And so
So my name
when you put them together, it's like a
name
more
is Grisel del
natural.
Valle, but La Chachi or Chachi was the name that my godmother gave me when I was a little girl. I've always
Then you still get a little bit of the breathiness. You still feel like you're in the room with them, which I think is kind of an important part of podcasts. Like we don't want to take the soul away from it. We want to hear little things that make us feel like we're in a place with these people. We're having a conversation with them. We're in the room with them. And so I remove things that are distracting, like if there's tons of reverb, I would cut that out, or if there's echo or things like that. But you leave a little bit of that personality in there.
I like to think of this as we're not taking you out of the room, we're making the room nicer.
So then, like with Reaper, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but like these folders are kind of the way it organizes. So like within here is all the voice tracks. So these are all sending to this effects chain here, all these different effects. And then that's sending into the master mix. And so, you know, it's all pretty great on its own before it goes into this, but this is just like a final limiter, final light compression. Yeah, I guess I'll say my favorite software to use for it too. I mean, all the FabFilter stuff is really good. All of the isotope stuff, Ozone and RX. I use RX on every project that I work on for sure. That is incredible stuff. And then I also use a software called Soothe, which you guys are probably familiar with, but that's a pretty cool one where you can remove harsh frequencies.
thank you for having
So
me,
you can just
guys.
see
Let's
the
get
frequencies that are
started
hitting and I
then.
can adjust
Shania, what's your
the
first
sharpness and stuff like
question?
that. It's
Okay, so we know
it's
that.
very, very useful for many things. But yeah, so with podcasts, you want to hit them around -16 to -20 LUFS for loudness. So I usually try to go between -16, -18. And it's not going to be perfect the whole way, but like you can get an average with the L2. So the only plugin that comes with Reaper that I use is the EQ sometimes, and it's just a very basic EQ. Yeah, all the plugins that I use are extra VSTs.
Sorry, not the answer you were hoping for,
Yeah,
probably.
sorry.
Awesome. So we've gotten through post-production. Let's talk about publication. So once you've created these wonderful shows, we want to get them out in the world. And so there's a couple of requirements. The great thing about podcasting is that it's open source. Anyone can submit to the podcast platforms and have their stuff be published um, within certain, you know, community guidelines. What you need to do is create something called an RSS feed, which is a kind of delivery system that has to live on a website. So a website must be created for the show, and it must be created in such a way that it could generate this RSS feed for you. You have to format your MP3s in the right way. You have to format all your branding, logos, all that stuff in the right way to appear with your feed on the different apps where people listen to podcasts. And then you need to submit to those services. You can do all that manually. You can create an RSS feed and submit your feed manually to Apple and Spotify. Um, Generally, those are the two you have to submit to manually, and then almost all the other podcasting apps, Overcast, Podbean, all these kind of things, draw from Apple. So once you're up on Apple, you're automatically up on all of those other ones. But you do have to submit to Apple and Spotify separately, and also Audible, which is not as popular for podcasting, but you can submit there. I'll talk about YouTube in a second. Um, uh, yeah, and there are third-party services that bundle all of this together. Um, we do our publication through a service called Captivate. I'll show you that in a minute. And then Captivate will create and most of these will create kind of a basic website for you that you can use. We use a separate other service to create website templates because we think they look better. And we offer that as this is all part of the service we offer our clients. So the same show we were just listening to, we heard the same episode, obviously in Descript and in Reaper. This is what the website for that show looks like. Again, we built this from a template for the client, links right to their site. This is a show we do with an organization called New York Edge, who do after school. They're one of our after school partners, and this is a show we do for them as a piece of marketing. And basically, it's kids, middle school kids, getting to interview interesting adults. It's won several awards. It's been a big success for them. But anyway, this is what the website for that show looks like. This is what it looks like up on Spotify and Apple after we've published it. This is Captivate, where we publish our things. This gives you a sense of the kind of metrics that we're able to capture. So basically, we're able to know listenership by month, by day, by all time, and engagement across time, across different platforms, and in different pieces of geography. This is kind of limited, but this is really the only information anyone is able to capture about podcasts, which is a little annoying, but that's how it is. And we work with it and we figure out how to make that be what people can use. We do a combination of social media campaigns. We do paid cross promotion, so running ads on other podcasts. So, in a word from our sponsor, if you like this show, you might also like blah blah blah. And programmatic ads, so things actually appearing on websites as banner ads and sidebar ads. Seems to be the formula. Oh, also, I should add to this, traditional PR is really useful. Getting people to write about the show, either in a newspaper, magazine, a blog, is really the most powerful promotion engine that there is. And that's actually another reason why we like working in seasons, because if you do 10 or 15 episodes, take a break, then do 10 or 15 more episodes, then you have something else to announce. Season 2 is coming next week. Here's season 2. Have you listened to season 2 yet? And that actually aids, we find, in that sort of PR effort, rather than if something's always on and there's no rhythm to the way that happens. And that's it. So that's our presentation, and we'd be delighted to take any questions that anyone has. I think Matt was maybe suggesting that the easiest way to do that would be to drop questions in the chat. And thanks everyone for coming. Generally, I thought this was, I hope this was helpful and interesting, and I'm curious for any feedback or any additional information that would be useful to you for the last 10 minutes that we have. Thank you. So first question here, how do you work with clients to get on board with the budgets needed to produce the way you want to produce? Whoa, well, sing me a song, brother. There's the question. That's a very hard one, and I think that is something that any sort of startup agency or studio or service provider has to come to terms with. What I found is the best way is, if they don't have the money, I don't work with them. I had to draw a line in the sand at some point and say, this is what we do. This is how much it costs. If this isn't a good fit for you, then you're not the right client for us. That is a very hard thing to do when you're starting out and you're sort of desperate for work. But it's the best thing I ever did, because it allowed us to concentrate on fishing in bigger ponds. It requires a lot. We had to show those capabilities. We had to build to the point where we could demand those kind of budgets. We have to show the results of those budgets. We have to show that the ROI is there. Generally, a season of podcasting with us starts at around $50,000. Could be a little bit less, could be significantly more, depending on the complexity of the show, if we're doing something like a really complicated documentary show or something like that. But that's a good guideline. Generally, if somebody is wincing at that price, they're probably not the right client for us. What I was going to say is, I think a lot about something somebody said about if you double your prices and lose half of your clients, you're getting the same amount of money for half as much work. And that, I think about that all the time, that it's a good place for sort of the story of your studio to just draw a line in the sand and say, you must be this tall to ride this ride. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. One other thing, how has technology changed the most since you started in 2012? Alex, what do you think? What do you think about that?
Um, I would say that technology it's changed in a way that just makes everything better. There was a lot, like when I was first learning this stuff and working with it, just
You talk about how it makes everything better, then I'm going to talk about how it makes everything worse. We'll counterpoint. No, I'm
well,
kidding. Yeah, go ahead.
sound quality. I mean, if
Yeah.
you listen to old music, I think we could argue about like, real compressors and stuff from the 70s and stuff and that how that sounds better and everything. But if you listen to like early 2000s stuff or, pop music from then, it just is not quite as full and as thick and just like it just doesn't have the same quality. And so these tools have just gotten better and it's gotten easier to do it. So for example, with noise removal, it used to be that would have to open it in a software and then literally draw like the area, like draw circles around the areas where there was noise that I wanted to remove. And now I can click a button and it can do that for me. But there's still adjusting that has to be done. Like there is no software where you just say, hey, make it nice. That those exist, but they're not good yet. They're not good enough to replace somebody. Like there's always going to be somebody that can adjust it. That these things they have a knob or a slider. There's always going to be somebody who can adjust it and make it better. And so if there is a way to make it better, then you're going to want to make it better. And so we're just going to continuously make sound better and better. And like I don't know where it's going to lead, but like it's things in digital world are going to sound cooler and more interesting and better than the real world. They probably already do, but it's just going to get more and more like that.
I'll offer a counterpoint to that I think that um, podcasting was always kind of an open source DIY sort of medium, but I think more and more and more people feel like, oh, we can just do it. We can just push a button. We can just make this happen. I think, particularly with all the AI stuff and that's happening. And I think it's fallen on us who have spent, a long time honing our chops and figuring out how to do really good work in this medium to be the standard bearers to show like, okay, yeah, like it doesn't matter how fast your stove can boil water if you don't know how to cook. The technique of telling a good story and the technique of really knowing how to edit and how to engineer at that level is enhanced by these tools, but they don't replace them. And I think it's interesting to see what people think they can do that they can't because they feel empowered by all these sort of snake oily kind of tools that are out there.
Yeah, and all these tools coming out that seem to be a one-stop shop. It's if everyone can do it at this level, then somebody who knows what they're doing can always do it at this level. So like there's always going to be people who can use these baseline tools better. And so there's going to be better quality and worse quality no matter
Yeah.
what.
And honestly, no shade at all of what Alex does and the necessity of the technical end of this. At the core, it's not a technology problem. It's a storytelling problem. Just like with music, right? Like you can have the best studio in the world and the greatest plugins and all the world's best microphones, and if it's a bad song, it doesn't matter. The things I'm most proud of about what we do are really kind of storytelling, narrative achievements, where we've really figured out a way to talk about something in a way that, people say, wow, I never thought of it that way, or I never would have put it that way, or I'm able to reach. We do a lot of like science and medicine and health content. And you know, I love when a doctor or researcher will come to us and say, no one's ever been able to explain what I do before. Like that's the stuff that really turns me on. And the tech is in service of that to me. Anyway, who owns the copyright of the podcast? Is the next question. In general, if you are making your own show, it's yours. Copyright is copyright. Anything you create is yours, even if whether you register it or not, as long as you're obeying, rules about using the music you use and making sure that's licensed and all these things. I'm sure you guys know all about that. A copyright lies with the creator. The exception is with an agency like ours. where generally, not always, but almost always, the work we do is work for hire for our clients. So it's in the contract we negotiate with them that it belongs to them. Do we produce music for our podcast, or do we source it from existing catalogs? We do a combination of both of those things. Both Alex and I are composers, and so sometimes we will create our own. If we have, the time, energy, inspiration, we'll create something new for a show. Often we will grab stuff. We subscribe to a couple of different stock libraries, and we'll grab stuff from there. Sometimes we'll do a semi-homemade thing where we'll take something from a stock library and sweeten it. We'll download the stems and mess with them and play with it. Every now and again, we'll license something from a label or a music service if there's something we really want to use. But it's a combination of all those things. Yeah. We actually did the most recent episode of our podcast, the podcast about making better podcasts, is all about using music and how we think about using music in our shows. So if you're interested in that topic, there's a whole hour-long conversation about that you can check out if you're curious. We're coming right up on time. We're happy to hang out for another couple of minutes if there are more questions.
But yeah, thanks guys. It was fun to explain what we do and everything like that. Thanks for having us, Amp.
Here, shall
You
I?
guys can hear me. This is Matt. But just wanted to say thank you guys so much for this presentation. It was really interesting. Like I said, we've never done anything like this for podcast for AMP. So this is going to be really important information for people to hear. And you guys clearly are experts, and we really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us tonight. So thank you very much.
It was a complete pleasure, Matt. Thank you so much for inviting us. I hope everybody found it useful. Please find us CitizenRacecar.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.